Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us here on Zoom. My name is Jake Pisani, and I'm the Public Information Manager for the San Jose Fire Department. The department is currently accepting applications for 911 dispatchers and will continue to do so through July 28th. Tonight's Ask a Dispatcher event will serve to provide information about a career in fire communications and hopefully answer any questions you may have about the role or hiring process. 3 members of the department's communications team will be our hosts for this evening. We're very fortunate to have Supervising Public Safety Dispatcher Monica Alcantar-Kirk, who oversees operations. Supervising Public Safety Dispatcher Kristen Earhart, who oversees training, quality assurance, and recruitment. And Senior Public Safety Dispatcher Marissa Gonzalez, who also oversees training and quality assurance. These individuals will share a PowerPoint presentation that covers position overview, minimum and preferred qualifications, salary and benefits, and more. We will then open it up to a Q&A session for any questions that may arise during the presentation. Without further ado, I'll pass the mic to Supervising PSD, Kristen Earhart.
Thank you, Jake, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight. We hope that you will have lots of questions and we'll be able to answer all of your questions. So while we get started, we'll go ahead and give you a brief overview of the position and what it is to be a San Jose Fire Dispatcher and what we do here. We'll go over a little bit about the requirements and the position, as Jake said, and then do the question and answer. So we'll go ahead and get started. So here on your screen is a little brief glimpse into what a San Jose Fire Dispatcher does. So public safety radio dispatcher is what 911 dispatchers are here at San Jose Fire Communications. And we process emergency fire and medical calls for the city of San Jose. So what that can mean is that we might provide instructions over the phone when someone calls 911 for a fire or medical emergency. We might provide CPR instructions, how to get out of a burning building, might help deliver a baby over the phone. We're that small piece in between, small but essential piece in between from when someone calls 911 and when the help arrives. And then another portion of our job is that we do radio dispatching. So we dispatch the units out to calls for service. So when someone calls 911 for, say, a house fire, then the radio dispatcher is going to send the call to their station, and they're going to have and coordinate the units that are responding and coordinate with them over the radio as they respond. So when you see all those fire engines and trucks out there, they're the ones that are talking to dispatcher on the other side of the radio. And then we are also considered essential workers and first responders. So here in the state of California, we are considered first responders as well. And then, so just some to go over our minimum qualifications. So I think they're pretty minimal considering the job, and that's because we do have an excellent training program. So minimum qualifications to be a part of our awesome team is to have a successful high school diploma, GED, or equivalent, 3 years customer contact experience. And so what that can look like is working with the general public in some sort of way. So we want you to have worked with our community because that's who calls 911. And so some of us have different backgrounds in restaurant, retail, customer service. So 3 years general customer contact experience working with the community, or 1 year working in a receiving, processing, or dispatching calls in a radio or dispatcher call center. You need to be authorized to work in the United States legally. And then we would prefer that you have the ability to type and use a computer because most of our work is done over the computer. So I think pretty good minimum qualifications for a really awesome career. And we'll talk about why in a moment. So to talk about the ideal qualities to join our team, I'm going to turn it over to Supervising Public Safety Dispatcher Monica Alcantar.
Thank you, Kristen. Hello, everybody. As Kristen said, my name is Monica Alcantar-Kirk with the San Jose Fire Department, and I oversee operations for our San Jose Fire Communications Center. I think if we had a magic wand, we would know exactly what makes a San Jose Fire Dispatcher, and all the qualities and dispatch centers all across the nation would be fully staffed. But some of the desired qualities you'll see in front of you on the screen. And there is quite a bit of teamwork, and there is quite a bit of multitasking. And those are some standard ones that you can kind of think about and that are needed for many jobs. But what makes this different is all of these different ideal qualities need to all come in one package and utilized all at different times. You're going to use some of these qualities in training. You're going to use some of these qualities throughout your career, your interactions with your coworkers, because if you think about the setting that you're in, it's highly dynamic and changing. It's different every day. You're constantly learning and you're helping your community and making a difference every single time you pick up the phone or you're dispatching units and helping our agency take care of the community that calls for help. So having all of these together and many more is very important. So it's really important for you to do some self-reflection and think and find out some information about this job. So step one, good job, you're here, finding out about San Jose Fire and exactly what we do. And step two is really ask yourself, do you have these qualities and can you implement them and go forward and live by them? And make sure you're constantly doing your self check-ins so that you can take care of yourself in this highly stressful job. And it isn't the the people or the actual job that I'm talking about. When I say high stress, it's because you could potentially be hearing the worst day of someone's life. And that is your everyday when you pick up that phone and answer the next call and you hear about the different emergencies. Because I want to be completely honest with what this job is. And even with that, it's still a job that I love and it is a career and it could be your career too. But you want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and bring some levity to the group because we want to make sure that you come and you have a wonderful time on our team. Thanks, Kristen.
Thank you, Monica. So just a little bit about the position that we're hiring for, or the salary and benefits. So in front of you see the training pay. So we have public safety radio dispatcher trainee, which is the position we're currently hiring for. And that's the base salary. And then after your training, which we'll talk about in a moment, you would then promote into a public safety radio dispatcher. And so that's that next level and it is a promotion. And then just some other things that we offer. So we have 3 different shifts that we work. And so you could get some shift differential if you're working maybe some more alternative hours or shift hours. So you get some additional pay there. And this is all inclusive of a 5% non-pensionable compensation pay, so ongoing. We also offer bilingual pay, uniform allowance, so some additional if you're some pay to get a uniform. As you can see, all 3 of us are in uniform. And we do have awesome paid vacation, paid sick leave, and tuition reimbursement, all of our medical, dental, vision plans, and then city retirement. And as a trainee, you are a full-time employee from day one. And so those benefits, all of those benefits that are listed there also apply to our trainees. You're a full-time employee with us. And so you would be able to have take advantage of those benefits as well as a part of our paid training. And so to talk a little bit about our training program, I'm going to turn it over to Senior Public Safety Dispatcher Marissa Gonzalez.
Hi, everybody. Like Kristen said, my name is Marissa Gonzalez. I'm a senior public safety dispatcher with San Jose Fire Comm. I'm also the training coordinator and quality assurance. So I would be the one teaching the academy once someone went through our training program. First and foremost, the question that everybody asks is, do we get paid? Starting day one, this is a paid training program. It is a paid training program. You become a city employee day one of your academy. You get sent to a new hire orientation with the city of San Jose, and they basically tell you what your benefits are as a city employee. When you do enter our training program is kind of split into 2, since there's 2 different functions of a public safety radio dispatcher. There is call taking and also radio dispatching. The first part will be your basic call taking academy, which you can see on the screen here, is 8 weeks long. During those 8 weeks, we build your skills as a basic call taker. We build upon the skills. We help you progress through these 8 weeks. You become certified EMD, which stands for Emergency Medical Dispatcher. When you become an emergency medical dispatcher, we train you on different protocols and also life-saving instructions, such as helping your caller to control bleeding, helping with CPR on the phone, because we are the first contact. So we can perform CPR while the other help is en route. We can also deliver babies over the telephone. All of those things we can do with our EMD, again, emergency medical dispatcher certification. We also get certified in EFD, which is emergency fire dispatcher. We also go through different protocols with that, anywhere from burning buildings, outside fires, people who are stuck in elevators, and we also give you instructions on how to help the people in those situations also. Also, you see that there are weekly tests. Throughout our 8-week program, you will be taking a test weekly, and every test progresses on the information that you learn weekly throughout those 8 weeks in your academy. By the end of your 8-week, you will take a final exam. You will take a final exam when of all the things that you have learned about, including our phone system and our CAD system, which is computer-aided dispatch, how to take calls, how to input calls, all of that will be on your final exam. The second academy that you do is your radio academy. That is 4 weeks, as you can see below. And in the radio academy, we show you how to talk to the units on the radio, how to dispatch the call, tell them where to go, what type of calls they're going on, and take any requests from them. Anytime we have a big house fire, we record all of the information that they give us during that event. Once you've completed the academies, once you completed your basic call taking academy, you then go into what's called a CTO program. That's a communications training officer program. It's the call taking portion is 12 to 16 weeks, so about 3 to 4 months. You are with a CTO every single day. And again, this is progress. So every 4 weeks, you go to a different trainer. And with those 4 weeks, you're progressing. So your first few weeks, you might just be sitting right next to your trainer. The next 4 weeks, they may be sitting away a little bit more. And it progresses till you become a solo call taker. Once you get signed off as a solo call taker, you are a solo call taker for about a month before you go into the radio academy. These are also in class learning. So it's like you're in school again. You go into a classroom setting, you're learning all kinds of information, and you're trying to retain all of this information in all of the weeks that we have you in the classroom. And also in your in-person on-the-job training with your CTO. You're also going to be learning then. For the Radio Academy, it's about 16 to 20 weeks of training with your CTO, again, communications training officer. And again, it's progression. So there's 4 separate phases, which are 4 weeks. And every 4 weeks, you go to another trainer. And each time you go to a different trainer, it'll be a different trainer. It could be on a different shift. So you progress through those 4 phases also. Once you're fully signed off, it takes about a full year to become a full-fledged 911 dispatcher. And after your training program, after that year, you're then on probation for about another year. And then you become a solo dispatcher after that. Yeah.
Thank you, Marissa. So that was a good brief overview of our training program and just a very, very little glimpse into what we do here. And Monica gave us some good information about the qualities we're looking for. But we wanted to keep it brief because we really want to provide the opportunity for everybody to go ahead and ask their questions that they might have. So I'm going to turn it back over briefly to our public information manager, Jake.
Thank you, Kristen, and thank you guys all for that wonderful presentation. We'll now move to the Q&A portion of the event. If anyone has a question, you can either submit it in text through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, or simply click raise hand. If you raise your hand, you may be called on and given the opportunity to unmute your microphone and ask your question. While the questions begin to populate, I'll go ahead and throw out the first one. So this one's for all three of you, but what is your favorite part about being a 911 dispatcher?
I'll start, and then I would like them both to answer as well. So for me, being able to help the community. So I know that seems like a very obvious answer, but I grew up in the city of San Jose, and being able to serve the community that I grew up in and help people every single day is one of my favorite parts. It's a job where you don't ever question that you're helping someone, and I think there's so much value in that, and it's not something you can get in every single job out there, or it might not be as obvious, but I don't ever question that I've helped someone every single day. And then now, as the training supervisor, being able to watch new dispatchers grow and learn and become awesome, our trainees become awesome dispatchers, is one of my favorite parts. Monica?
My favorite part about being a 911 dispatcher. As a San Jose Fire dispatcher, we can take 911 calls, but we're also dispatching our units on the radio. And between those two job tasks, I always tended more towards the call taking side and answering those 911 phone calls. I do love being on the radio as well, and I'm not so much in the control room taking those 911 calls or dispatching on the radio anymore. But my favorite part was answering those 911 calls. It's kind of neat. It's something where you have no idea what call is coming in, and you know that you have the training and the information to be able to help the person that is going to be calling on the other end of the line. So there's a lot of thinking, quick thinking on your feet, decision making, and that part I really do like. And then I also echo what Kristen said. I was fortunate to be part of our training program before as well, and watching our newly hired dispatchers emerge and evolve into solo dispatchers and completing the training program. That's one of the best parts for me to see as well, because it's a pretty amazing thing to train someone to take that 911 call and to dispatch on the radio and make these very impactful decisions that can change people's lives every day. Little cliche there, but it is all very true how impactful the dispatch profession is.
Okay. My favorite part about being a public safety dispatcher, I was born and raised in San Jose. I love my city. I love the community, and knowing that I can help the community every single day that I'm here is one of the most rewarding things for me, for my life. I have family that lives here. I have a lot of friends that live here, and knowing that I could be on the other line if one of their family members has an emergency and I can help them is really my favorite part of the job. Just knowing that I can help my community and the one that I was born and raised in.
All right, thank you guys. Let's take a question from the audience here. Marissa, this one's going to come to you. Do you continue the solo call taking while in the radio dispatch training?
Yes, once a week while you're in radio dispatch training, we have you do we call it a phone day. So you can keep up your skills as a call taker. And that happens once a week. We make sure to implement that during your training. We want you to stay efficient throughout your other training also. And you also do have opportunity for overtime when you become a solo call taker.
Thank you. This question comes from Anna, and Monica, this one's going to be for you. How do you handle a call from a family member?
Thank you for the question, Anna. How do I handle a call from a family member? We try very hard to make sure that we're giving the same level of service to every single person in our community, and we follow MPDS and FPDF protocols. So when we do encounter someone that we do know on the other end of the line, it can pull on a heartstring, and you kind of get into maybe, I would say, more of an adrenaline mode, and you take care of what you need to take care of. And then maybe afterwards, that's kind of when you realize what you just did or what just happened. But that's another reason why we have these protocols and you have your training, because when you are thrown into different types of incidents and emotions that come with that, very real human emotions that come with those types of calls and incidents, you can fall back onto your training. And as Marissa explained and Kristen said, we have such a rigorous training program to make sure that you are prepared to take that 911 call. And we also, it has happened to me before. I've had a family member call on the phone, or I've seen maybe a family address come up in our CAD, as Marissa mentioned, our computer aided dispatch. That's the computer program that we utilize to triage our calls and type in our calls, and what we use to dispatch those units to the emergencies. And so when you see something familiar to you personally pop up on there, we fall back onto our training. You can speak with your supervisor that's in the room, make sure they're aware so that they can support you and have any needs in case you have any needs. And you can take care of what you need to get done so that you're not only taking care of yourself, but then we're also continuing to serve our community so everyone gets the same wonderful level of care that we have here at San Jose Fire.
Thank you, Monica. Let's get a question to Kristen here. This one comes from Alexander. Where is the dispatch center located?
Thank you. So we are sort of in downtown San Jose area, like near just kind of general, like the courthouse and kind of a civic center area.
Thank you, Kristen. Kristen, let's stay with you. This question comes from Dan. He asks, can you explain more about the 5% non-pensionable pay? What is that?
Yeah, so we have the majority of our pay. So we have pensionable pay, meaning that it's going to go towards our retirement pension. And then we have a small portion, that 5% of it that was part of union contract negotiations, where that portion is not going to go towards our pension.
Thank you. Marissa, I have a question for you. This one comes from Brittany. What advice would you give to a trainee to be successful?
Once someone comes into our training program, again, it's pretty rigorous and there's a lot of information. What I could say as far as advice is come in with an open mind, come in ready to learn. There is going to be a ton of information. It is going to be overwhelming, but being prepared with an open mind, willing to learn all of this information, taking it very seriously, and most of all, study. But also just be ready to have like a really great commute and make it a positive experience. At the end of all the rigorous training that you go through, it really is such a positive experience. And I really couldn't think of doing anything else. And it was totally worth all of the hours put in.
Can I add on to that, Jake?
Absolutely.
So I always like this question, so I'm going to steal it too, Marissa. All of us who have been in the training unit always want to answer this one. So I think just coming in, like Marissa said, and being humble, being open, ready to learn, communicate with your people what you need. So whether it's your people at home and having them help you, because it is an intense process. Marissa and I and everybody here at our awesome team are here to help you if you are hired on with us. But you got to also communicate with your folks. You're going to be studying, you're going to be learning a job, and it's hard for a reason, because we want our folks do a really good job here, and to be a part of our team, we want the best of the best. And so be humble, be willing to learn, and then also advocate for yourself. If you're not picking up on something or you're having a harder time, talk to us. One of the things that we're here to help and we want to support you. So advocating for yourself and what you need as you go through the training program. And I want Monica to add on to it as well.
Sure. What Marissa and Kristen said, definitely make sure you apply, and that would be in any dispatch career. And what can help make a trainee successful is I think remembering your brain can't get full. In the very beginning of the training program, you are going to receive a lot of information and a lot of things that you need to learn. And I promise your brain won't get full. You can keep adding to it. And the training program is built so that there's building blocks, so you get layers and layers of information. And then at the end, you reflect and you look back and you realize it was a small blip in your career and it went by really fast. So making sure that you're taking the academy portion and the training seriously, so then you can carry all of that with you when you are working in the control room. But share your experience with your family so that they understand and know what you're doing, and making sure to communicate to your CTO, your communications training officers, your academy peers, even utilizing them as a work group to help work through the academy, and just reaching out and making sure you understand where you are and what you need to do and work hard. It's like going to college almost, but you're going to get paid for it and you're going to get all the benefits and you're part of our team on day one. But you do need to have that dedication behind it and maintain that dedication throughout your training and continue that onto your career.
Thank you guys very much. Monica, we're going to stick with you here. This question comes from Alyssa. She asked, what are the shift rotations? Are they 8, 10, 12 hours?
Hi, Alyssa. Thank you for joining us tonight. At the moment, our shift rotations are 8-hour rotations. So we would work 5 days, 8 hours a day, and then 2 days off. There's another iteration of our shift schedules where we could potentially work a 9-hour shift. So we could have a 2-day weekend and then a 3-day weekend, and one of our days would be an 8-hour shift. And in order to take care of our community 24/7, we have 3 different working shifts, what we call day shift, swing shift, and midnight shift. Day shift starts at 06:30 and that goes till 14:30, which is 2:30 p.m. Military time is what we utilize. That's your little bonus for tonight. We utilize military time. You're going to have to learn it. And then our swing shift starts at 14:30. 2:30 p.m. and we'll go until 22:30, which is 10:30 p.m. And then our midnight shift will work overnight. They begin their shift at 22:30, which is 10:30 p.m. And then they will end when our day shift starts back up again at 06:30 in the morning. That's what we have at the moment for our scheduling, but there are some different things that we would be able to do. And you, if you are part of our team, will help us with that. When we have more staffing, we may have more options for our scheduling.
Thank you, Monica.
Yeah.
Kristen, I'm going to have this one for you. This comes from Travis. He says, I have my critical cert from SJPD. Is that something I would need to complete for the fire department as well, or is the PD one good?
Thank you for the question. We do have our own critical as part of the process. So we do not take outside critical scores. I'm sure it can help you because you've taken the tests, but we don't take outside critical. So it'll be a part of our hiring process.
Thank you, Kristen. Marissa, let's go to you next here. This question comes from Dan. He asks, after being fully trained, do you take either call taking or radio in a given day, or do you do both in the same day?
During your regular working shift, the senior on duty, so kind of like your manager or the equivalent to a captain of of the fire department, they basically fill out the schedule and we like to alternate. So one day you may be phones, the next day you will be radio, phones, then radio. That way you have a good alternation throughout the week and you keep up your skills instead of doing everything one week or the next week. We alternate. There's a number of people on your shift that have to alternate also, so you wouldn't just be one. There is a possibility, however, if you do work a little overtime to do all phones one day, but on your regular shift, we do alternate what you would do daily.
Thank you. This next question, let's start with Monica and then Marissa as well. This question comes from Michael. He asks, what skill makes your day easier? Is there a make or break skill that we should know about?
What skill makes your day easier? I think it's more a mindset, and it would be a positive attitude, because that will trickle down into all of the skills that you're going to need to have a good day in dispatch. So I'm going to actually take that one a step back and say it needs to start with a positive attitude so you can utilize your skills to the fullest.
One of the great things about being a 911 dispatcher is our day is never the same. So one skill that I keep is every day I come into the control room knowing that my day isn't going to be the same as yesterday. So I start the day off fresh every single day, and definitely with the positive mindset that I'm going to have a great day. And everybody in the control room that you work with always wants to have a great day. But I always remember that the same thing isn't going to happen yesterday, because that was yesterday. I didn't take anything home. And today the same thing isn't going to happen either. And that's basically what probably gets me through every single day and being able to start off the day fresh and new.
Thank you both. This question comes from Jake. I'm going to ask it to Kristen. Seems like an important one. How many positions are you hiring for?
That is an important one. So the number of positions that we'll end up hiring are based on our vacancies. So we currently have 11 vacancies for dispatchers. We are currently wrapping up a process. So there's some folks currently in a different process. So depending on the outcome of that and the number of vacancies at the time of hire will be how many we end up hiring, but currently 11 vacancies.
Thank you, Kristen. Let's go to Monica for this one. This question comes from Nicholas. He asks, I'm aware of the large amount of overtime. Roughly how many hours a month of overtime is expected/required?
Well, we don't have a minimum amount of overtime that you have to work, but we do have mandatory overtime. We need to maintain certain staffing levels in order to help our community effectively and answer those 911 calls. So on duty during our day shift and swing shift time, we have 6 personnel, 5 dispatcher call takers, and then 1 shift supervisor, which is the senior. And then on mids, there are times when we have 6 or potentially 5 on duty at the time. And you will have the opportunity to sign up for overtime ahead of time, which we call pre-scheduled overtime. And then there's also something called last minute overtime, where maybe if someone has to call out sick and you have the lowest amount of overtime hours, you could potentially get what we call tagged to hold over on that shift so that we can maintain our minimum staffing. We are looking to fill our positions and get people trained so there isn't as much overtime on all of our folks collectively. But that is one thing that is inherent with this type of public safety work, so we can maintain our minimum staffing required to manage our emergency services. Some people love the overtime, and you see a lot of people constantly taking that pre-scheduled overtime or volunteering to hold over. And then we have some folks that don't want to work as much overtime, and they still end up doing their fair share also because they will sign up, or they will recognize that there's overtime that needs to be taken, or it may get mandatory. And so they will go ahead and take that overtime as well. I'm also going to go a little bit further into this because you are able to get vacations, and you're able to do a vacation bid, so you will get time off. And then we also have something called shift substitutions, where maybe you didn't bid for that vacation, but you really needed to attend a family event or really wanted to attend something important in your life. You could ask a coworker to take that shift for you, and then they could work those hours for you at another time. So even with the mandatory overtime, you are allowed vacations, and you also can do something called those shift substitutions. So there is ways to work that in to try and help with that work-life balance, because we do work a lot here in dispatch, and that is an excellent question that you had for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see. This question will go to Marissa. It was an anonymous question. Do we get to pick our own schedule, or are we given a schedule / shift?
This is a few different answers. So when you are in the training program and you go into your CTO, so when you are with a communications training officer, we assign the shift based on where your CTO has bid for the year. We assign it to you. You don't get to choose which shift. So if you think like a day shift works better for you, it's basically based on who is available, which CTO is available, and which one we've assigned you to. Once you finish your training program, you will then be administratively assigned by operations. So someone like Monica would assign your shift to you, and that's based on a number of things. We want you to get experience on each shift. We also, like Monica said, have a lot of overtime, so it would also be based on staffing levels, but mostly it's based on the experience. Every shift has their own personality, and you would want to get experience on each shift. At the end of the year, once you are all trained up and it's time for the process, we have what's called a shift bid. Once a year, what's called bid, we bid for our shifts for the full year, and it's all based on seniority. At that time, you kind of get to choose. Again, it's based on seniority, and our year is split up into 3, which is called a trinary. So you get to bid based by seniority, your first 4 months, then your next 4 months, and so on. So it's really a progression. You get assigned first, and then you start to bid once you are in the position to bid.
Thank you, Marissa. Let's go to Kristen here with a question from Kevin. He asks, are there any books or materials we can study to prepare for a potential interview?
There's not any books that I know of where you can prepare or study for potential interviews. But if you go to our job listing, it does list out the different parts of the process. And so for everyone to just keep in mind, this is a process. It's not something where you're going to get hired once the job closes tomorrow, or sorry, on the 28th, but it's a process, and there's different steps in the process, and you have to continue to pass and progress through those steps in order to get hired. And so if you look at those steps, it does mention something called an oral board and then a selection interview. So I always recommend do some research, go look at what those are. There's information out there that does have some good, there's some things out there that has good information. There's also a site or a YouTube that I've heard of called the Raspy Dispatcher. And she has some, she's a dispatcher, not with us, but she does have some information on getting hired and different steps of a normal public safety dispatcher process. So I would just go ahead and go out there and do some research, but I can't think of any specific books or study material for the interview process.
Thank you, Kristen. I'm going to stick with you on this one. Okay. Should be a pretty simple answer, I think. Couple people have asked, is there a words per minute minimum for typing required?
We don't currently have that as one of our requirements. Again, you do need to pass all of the steps. So there's a typing portion in that the critical test that someone mentioned earlier. They had a critical score, and I said you'd have to complete it as a part of a hiring process. So there is a typing portion in that, but not necessarily a minimum words per minute requirement. We do want you to be able to type quickly to be able to keep up with traffic, because you're going to be multitasking. So typing to keep up with what a caller is saying, and typing up to keep up with the units are saying over the radio, because things can move very quickly. And so being accurate with what you're documenting and recording, and being able to keep up with hearing something over the ear and in your ear, and you might be typing something different than what you're hearing. And so that multitasking does come into it.
Thank you, Kristen. Let's go to Monica for this one. Question comes from Ivana. When someone calls 911, do the calls get separated between police dispatch and firefighter dispatch, or how does that work between the departments?
That is a good one, Ivana. The San Jose Fire Department Dispatch Center is what's called a secondary PSAP. And PSAP stands for Public Safety Answering Point. And so we're that secondary level of that 911 system most of the time. So for example, if someone were to call 911 here in the city of San Jose, they, depending on how they call, are most likely going to reach a law agency first. So that might be San Jose PD or CHP. And what they'll do is they'll find out initially what's happening. Is it a police type of call? Is it a fire emergency? Is it a medical emergency? And if it's a police type of call that has some scene safety implications, that law agency will keep the call to get what they need to make sure that the scene is safe. And then if it's strictly medical or fire related, that call gets transferred over to us. There are instances where people could dial our 10-digit direct line, and we may be that initial contact that somebody gets. But in general, that's how we might receive that call. And from there, we'll gather information, get help started while we're continuing to triage the call, and then continue dispatching our units and give them updated information as we're doing that information gathering. There's another way that we can also receive calls, and that's text to 911. Santa Clara County does receive text to 911, and that's another potential way where we might receive a call.
Thank you, Monica.
Yeah.
Let's get one to Marissa here. This question comes from Brianna. And the question is, what was your motivation through the process to become a dispatcher?
Well, I'll be very real about it. I did not want to do this at first. I had been told about this job over the years. I actually worked in a dispatch center doing a different job, but I seen a lot of the calls that they were going through, and a lot of the different types of calls that they had to deal with. And I was like, I would never, ever do this. The job came up. I was laid off for about a year and I needed a job. So I applied. I ended up really, really enjoying all the information that I was getting and the kind of impact that I was making on my community. The motivation that I have is just, it's about helping the community. Every day I come to work and I know that I can help somebody here, and that really motivates me. I'm really close-knit family, so my family really motivates me to do my best. They always have in any endeavor that I have chosen to do. And they're always my positive impact when I'm having a bad day. But for me, my motivation is that all the things that I want to do that my parents always wanted me to do with my life, I could do with this job. I can travel, we have vacation time, and we have opportunity to do things like that. And it keeps me going, the amount of time that I work, but the amount of time that I have off, I'm able to do those things, and it's what keeps me going all the time.
Thank you, Marissa. Let's go to Kristen for this next one here. Question comes from Kevin. And the question is, out of the 11 vacancies that were mentioned earlier, how many people are competing for these positions?
Well, that's an excellent question. I can't give you an accurate answer because this is still an open hiring process. So we don't know how many people are going to apply and how many people will be in the process for those 11 spots. Hopefully a lot, so we can have a lot of people and a lot of awesome people to choose from.
Thank you. Kristen, we'll stick with you here. Let's see. This question comes from Jake. And the question is, does having previous EMT or paramedic experience help with this position?
It can't hurt. It's definitely not a requirement. So for folks who don't have it, don't let it dissuade you. I remember being kind of intimidated in the process when I sat next to a paramedic in one of our hiring processes, and I was like, I'll never get it, but I got it. So it can't hurt. One thing I will say is we are providing instructions over the phone and information over the phone and taking information over the phone. So someone who has field experience has to be able to learn to translate that and be able to kind of shift, and instructions may sound different or feel different because we're giving it to someone where we can't see what they're doing. But having that field experience and that medical terminology and knowledge of what happens in the field, it certainly would not help hurt someone in the process. And I can only imagine that it might help them.
Thank you, Kristen. Monica, we're going to get you the next one here. It looks like a couple of different people have asked this question. How many average calls do you receive a day?
Depends if you're talking about emergency phones or including business lines. And that is going to vary depending on time of day and time of year on what that average is going to be per day. I saw that question come up actually. And so I looked really quick for everybody. And for instance, yesterday, what I was able to see on our emergency lines, we had incoming about 305 calls on our emergency lines. So I would say that's a relatively good average, and we're in summertime. So we're starting to see maybe an uptick increase of responses and calls because we are getting into our wildland season and fires, and there may be more medicals, especially with the heat coming up this weekend. So your mileage is going to vary with that average number, but that's just a little snip or an example of about the amount of calls that we do get per day.
Thank you, Monica. Marissa, this one is actually addressed directly to you. No pressure. The question is, how do you handle difficult people, and what's your self-care after?
Well, throughout our training program, we try to give you enough skills in order to handle difficult calls. We do what's called repetitive persistence, where we give you an action with the reason and how to repeat that, something like, listen to me so that I can help you. So we give you tools how to process those calls and how to try to get through to your callers. And basically, that's how we get through the call itself. After the call, if we've had a tough call, we definitely rely on our coworkers at first, but that's kind of levels of different things. My self-care, it varies. In our dispatch environment, we have a number of people who really like to read, and we have some sort of a book club. Reading is one of the things that I like to do for self-care after my shift or on the weekend. I definitely spend a lot of time with my family, and my dog is awesome. I'm also a martial artist, so when I get a chance to do that, I go and take classes at my studio. Well, not mine specifically, but the studio that I'm part of, the association that I'm part of. And I like to hang out with my family and friends a lot. I have a very close-knit group of friends and family that I hang out with, and they are also part of my self-care.
Thank you, Marissa. This one I'll kind of pose to all three of you. I like this question. It's from Brianna. And the question is, have any of you ever been on a ride along with the fire department to see what it's like on the other side of the dispatch?
I'll start. Oh, go for it, Monica.
Okay. Absolutely, 100%. And it is encouraged and actually part of our training program, incorporated to the end of the academy, where you do a ride along. And you can ride along with the engine. And we also like to take it a step further. Once you've learned some radio dispatching, you will also get to do a ride along with the battalion chief. And we think it's very important to make sure to understand what's happening on the other end of those EMS calls or at fires. And we actually have what we call Basic Fire Dispatch Academy, where we will host for the county. And the instructors are mainly fire line personnel, captains, chiefs, and they will come and help give this perspective of what their expectation is from the line. And then we can understand, or that can help us anticipate working events and their needs, so that we can handle that emergency event as smoothly as possible or help with prompts. So that is definitely incorporated, not only just because it's fun, but also because it is a huge learning aspect and can help you with the job. And we also will do it vice versa. If folks from our department wanted to do what we call a sit along, where they can see the dispatch side of things, because it goes both ways, and seeing the calls triaged, hearing the callers, and then seeing what we need to do in CAD in order to dispatch those units correctly and all the multitasking that happens behind the scenes. It's really a great training tool both ways for line personnel, but also for us here in dispatch.
Go for it,
Monica. Kristen, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I think Monica handled it really well. It was a great answer. But I'll echo that we all of us have, and we encourage folks to continue, and we have it in our training program as well.
Kristen, I'll stick with you here. This question comes from Ronette, and the question is, what are the requirements for bilingual pay?
Thank you. Good question. So the city has certification tests. So if it's a link, to get certified in the language, you'd have to complete, I believe it's a written and an oral test. So there's different certifications. You could be certified to speak a different language orally, and then also verbally, or also write in a different language. So there's a city test. So it'd be through the city of San Jose to get that bilingual certification.
Thank you. This is another question that's come up a couple times, so I'm going to pose it to all three of you. What is the most difficult thing about your job?
That's a tough question. I think as a dispatcher, one of the hardest things is sometimes you don't know what happens at the end of that call. You don't always get that period at the end of the sentence. Because once you hang up the phone, the people are so relieved to see the responders, they're done, and they're ready to move forward and continue to mitigate this emergency. And so you don't always get the period at the end of the sentence. And as that can be hard. Dispatchers are often oddly visual, even though we're not seeing things, we're visual people often. And so I think we have really good imaginations, which is great, except that you probably are always imagining the worst. It might not always be the worst. But on the other side of that, we do have things in place where we can try to get some of those answers. Not always, not on every single call, but We do have a critical incident stress management team, CISM, where we can, if there's like a tough call or a really bad incident or something that affects a call taker, a dispatcher, the line personnel, we will all get together for what's called a debriefing, and we'll talk about the call and help each other kind of process what happened so that we can go home and be whole healthy people at home in our lives and with our friends and family. So I think for me, that's one of the tougher things, is sometimes you might not always know what happened. And so helping yourself to not imagine the worst all the time.
I could go next. Excuse me. One of the hardest things about being a dispatcher for me is that not everybody understands what you do. And so you can't necessarily talk to them about how your day went. Everybody always says, oh, it's that funny call or things like that. But, you know, sometimes maybe you just didn't have a great day, and that's okay. But you can't really talk to them about the kind of calls you take or things like that for them to understand like why your day was the way it was. Another thing is not everybody understands your schedule. So especially when you first start, people aren't going to understand why you couldn't make it to that birthday on a Saturday because your days off are on Tuesday and Thursday. It's not an 8 to 5, you know, it's not a 8 to 5 with weekends off. And it's definitely a different kind of schedule because you're working different shifts, and sometimes you're changing shifts all year. So it takes a while for people to actually understand what kind of work you do and how what kind of schedule you have. And especially if you're changing, then they never know your schedule. So that's probably the hardest part for me.
Those are both good ones about the hard parts of this job. And for me, I think one of the hardest parts of this job, which is also something that I really like about this job, is the constant change of this job. There's a lot of technology coming in the 911 profession with next generation 911. One element to that is text to 911 that I mentioned before. That was brand new for all of us when we implemented that. So change, you get used to something, right? And we get into our groove and we're doing something some way. And then we need to change our method. We need to change our procedure. We need to change the way we're wording something. And sometimes old habits die hard, and this profession is constantly changing and evolving. And so that can be hard, but I also like that aspect of it because my job isn't always staying the same.
All right, thank you guys. This question is for, let's see here. This question would be for Kristen. Is a California driver's license required for this position?
A California driver's license is not required for the public safety radio dispatcher, trainee, or dispatcher position. So no.
Thank you. This one's for Marissa. Question is from Ronette. Question is, what kind of trainings are available after the training? Is there ongoing education?
There is always ongoing education with our job. Like Monica said, things are changing, especially with technology. So we put out different kinds of trainings monthly, any refreshers, any policy changes, things like that. But also with our job, you can take other kinds of trainings. One of the things that we offer is something called an incident dispatch team, which helps you go out into the field, and you could work as a dispatcher with the firefighters on scene of a fire or of a big event. So there are trainings that you can take for that if you'd like to advance in your career a little bit. Once I came into the training realm, I was also able to take different trainings, learning how to do quality assurance for our calls. So yes, there is a number of trainings that you can still take in order to advance in your career, but throughout the year, we actually have a certain amount of trainings that we have to have a certain amount of hours in order to continue being certified with EMD and EFD. Again, that's emergency medical dispatch and emergency fire dispatch. So we're training all year, again, whether it's advancing in your career or continuing education that we have to have, or taking it upon yourself to learn new things.
Thank you, Marissa. This question is for Monica. It comes from Travis. Is the pay schedule biweekly?
Hi, Travis. Yes, it's a 2-week pay period, so you'll get paid every other Friday.
Thank you, Monica. Let's go to Marissa. This question comes from Dan, and the question is, do dispatchers learn 10 codes or code systems?
So with the fire department, we use what's called clear text. So everything that we say is verbalized clearly. We don't not necessarily use 10 code. We don't use it over the air when we're talking to our units. We don't use codes with them verbally, but we do have to learn some 10 code in our training because we are what's called a secondary PSAP, and PD will process the call before us. So they may use a code in the event and we would have to understand it. There's about 10 codes, not 10 codes, but there's about 10 to 12 different codes that we learn from PD just to be familiar with their, to be familiar with the most common codes that we would see and when we would have an associated event with them. So we don't have to learn all of them, but we do use some of them. But mostly we speak in clear text.
Thank you, Marissa. We're going to go to Kristen here. This question comes from Alyssa. And I apologize if you've already touched on this. I don't remember. But how often do you hire? Is it yearly or every few years?
Good question. So we hire based on the number of vacancies, like I kind of said earlier, but I didn't answer this one. So I would say there's not a set number, but in my time here, we've hired about twice a year at a minimum is what I've seen. There might be years where we might do one hiring, but as long as we have vacancies, we're going to continue hiring. So I think this year we have the process we're wrapping up and then the one we're starting with this one that we're currently hiring for. So that would be 2 for this year.
Thank you, Kristen. Don't mute yourself. I'm going to come right back to you.
Okay.
This question is from Michael. And the question is, how much are union dues?
So for that one, I would just say that information is probably going to be in our MOA, our Memorandum of Agreement. So we are with AFSCME Local 101, MEF Local 101, and I think you can find that information online for those unit dues.
Thank you. I'm going to pose this one to anyone who'd like to answer it. Is there opportunity for promotions within the department? And that question comes from Marisol.
Unless one of you wanted to do it. Thank you, Marisol, for promotions within our department. So the fire service is based on a chain of command and different ranks, and the communication center parallels that. And what you would do is you'd start off as a PSRD, the Public Safety Radio Dispatcher trainee. And then once you've completed that training, you would get promoted to a Public Safety Radio Dispatcher, what we call PSRD. And that's the end of the program, end of the training, and that's what you're aspiring to complete and become and get that promotion after this job application and entry and moving forward. From there are different opportunities for you to continue promoting within our department. And at that PSRD level, you could also be a CTO, Communications Training Officer. You would receive additional pay when you were training. You would also have the opportunity to promote into the senior PSD level. And that is like a room supervisor, shift supervisor, where you would oversee operations in the day-to-day control room. Kristen or Marissa mentioned it. That senior in the room is kind of equivalent to a captain on the fire engine. They're monitoring the calls coming in, and they're supporting their team members in the room and taking care of any supervisory needs. And that would be the shift supervisor. So that would be that first level of promotion after PSRD. As a senior, you can also go into some other career opportunities. We have 3 different realms here on our administrative side to help support operations in the fire control room. One of them is system support, and that's our technology side for our CAD, that computer system, our phones, our radio. And you could be one of the system seniors that helps support that part or aspect of dispatch. There's also the other side of it, which is where Kristen and Marissa are coming from for us, our training, quality assurance, and recruitment realm. And as a senior dispatcher, you could be part of that training and quality assurance and get additional trainings to be a certified Q for quality assurance and help with the training unit. And then there's also operations side. So over in my world, and there's an opportunity to be a senior in the operations side. After senior PSD, you could promote to a supervising PSD, and keeping the parallels with our fire rankings, you have a captain and then a battalion chief. So supervising PSD is kind of like that BC, and there are 3 different people that hold that. It would be myself and Kristen, and then also our other supervising PSD, Sarah Ann Treadwell, and we all oversee those different realms. And following that, we have our communications division manager, Michael Wadnick, who I think is actually on the call right now. Hi, Michael. Thanks for listening in and supporting us on our Ask a Dispatcher event. So there are definitely opportunities for promotion and looking at different aspects of the dispatch profession here at San Jose Fire, but there are so many things that you can do with dispatch and dispatch careers. And that's kind of the promotional track that we have here for San Jose Fire.
Thank you, Monica. We're going to go to Kristen here. Question comes from Yuri. Is the city pension part of CalPERS?
Good question. It is not. So the city has its own pension. It is not a CalPERS pension.
Thank you. Kristen, I'll stick with you again. What types of customer service roles would be a good experience for being a dispatcher?
All right, I'll answer, but then I will offer if Monica or Marissa wants to add too. So working with the general public, so that can be, I came, for instance, from restaurants and retail. So I worked in a lot of retail jobs, and then I also owned a restaurant for a while and served at different restaurants. And so working with whoever is going to call 911. So something where you're working with the general population, because that, so it's, I would say I came from restaurant retail, maybe someone who works as a barista, server, any type of customer service, anything like in a grocery store, things like that, where the majority of the public is going to go ahead and be there, and that you're going to interact with them. So maybe not something that's so specialized where there might be more limited contact. I'll open it up just to share, maybe if Marissa or Monica want to share what background they came from, because I think one of the neat things is hearing where we all came from. A lot of folks don't necessarily grow up saying, I want to be a dispatcher. For instance, I found it on Craigslist. And so hearing kind of what they came back, what their background is, can be helpful too. Monica, I'll start with you.
So I do know that we all came from different backgrounds. Retail is really awesome. I sold cell phones for a really long time. So that's not 911 at all, but I was definitely working with the community. I was also a martial arts instructor for a pre-college program at San Jose State. So also working with our community. Not so much my last job. I was working at a national laboratory, so it was a little bit different, but everybody that I work with has come from a different background of customer service. I've actually recently been doing a lot of recruitment events, and people do have questions like, if I work for McDonald's or KFC, does that qualify? Of course it does. You are working with the community. You have to maintain good customer service. You speak to people all day, every day. So don't discredit what you're doing. If you have to talk to people in your community on a daily basis, and you can highlight that in your application, then you could definitely qualify to become a dispatcher.
All right. So I've been doing this for about a little over 15 years now. And I came into this profession by accident. So just like Kristen said, people don't grow up saying they want to be a dispatcher. That's kind of an unseen part of public safety that people don't realize until maybe they hear about it. And that's what happened with me. I had heard about it, and now I'm here and I've stayed. But I had no public safety background prior to this. And some people might be hesitant maybe to apply because they don't have that public safety background. But again, that's okay. This is an entry-level job. And if you meet that minimum criteria, and this sounds like something that you really want to do, don't let that stop you. Prior to this, I used to be a wedding coordinator. So nothing to do with public safety or 911 emergencies, and a very different type of profession. And I was able to kind of find some similarities to see what things and skills that I had learned as a wedding coordinator that would help translate over to this job. And I think a lot of anything with customer contact can translate over to a public safety dispatcher, because there are so many skills that you need to use all at once. And like Marissa said, don't discredit what you do and think that it might not. Make sure that you are describing the customer contact that you do have, so that we know that you could qualify and meet that part of the criteria. But we're looking for people from all different walks of life, and that's exactly who calls 911. And that's who we need to help our community and answer those phones. So all different backgrounds. And I think Marissa said it also, the folks that we do have here really do come from everywhere. I think one of our other hires, someone came from in and out. People have come from the health industry. People have come from all over the place. And it's pretty cool that we can all come together, and then we end up in this job. And it's really neat to work with all these fantastic folks from different backgrounds.
Thank you, guys. Let's go to Kristen for this one. It comes from Wida. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. The question is, how long does the entire hiring process take?
Good question. So, and I like that you said process. So like I said earlier, it's a process. So if you look at the timeline, we're hiring right now. So when the application closes on the 28th, we're hiring for an academy. We're hoping to start on December 11th or 12th, looking at 11th, looking at a calendar. And so it's about 6 months, about 5.5 to 6 months for the process. And there's lots of necessary steps. So it is a process. If you continue to progress, just make sure you know that you're in it for that amount of time, and plan on a December hiring date.
Thank you, Kristen. Let's go to Monica. And this question is from Dan. Do you interact with Santa Clara County Sheriff's Department or just SJPD?
As a dispatcher, you are going to interact with lots of different allied agencies. We could actually interact with the dispatch center that's on the other side of the country. So we do work very closely, especially with those other agencies in Santa Clara County, not only fire departments, but also the law enforcement aspect side of public safety as well. We could be interacting via phone call. There is another agency where we share a CAD to CAD link, so our computer software is linked together so we can share some information about calls. And one of them is for the sheriff's office. So within Santa Clara County, there is constant communication between the other agencies and the potential to go further beyond that.
Thank you, Monica. Marissa, I'm going to go to you now. This question comes from Brianna. How do you take your breaks or lunch away from calls?
So in the control room, we start with 5 dispatchers and a senior. One of the positions in the control room is a relief position. So we do have a break schedule that we take, and everybody gets a break. We're required 2 15-minute and 30-minute breaks. And each of those is on a schedule. So the relief, we're cross-trained. So the relief person would do both call taking and radio. So when it's time for your break, they would take over for you. There are instances where we're really busy and we can't take one because there's too many calls or really big, multiple big calls in our city. But for the most part, we have a relief person. They relieve us. You do get to take your breaks every day. I believe it's union mandated. So you're able to take a break.
Thank you. Let's go back to Monica here. How flexible is the job in regards to having to leave in the middle of the shift, for example, to pick up a sick child from school?
How flexible? Well, we want to make sure that you are taken care of and that your family is taken care of. It's very important to have people who are in the right mindset to be here at work. And if you have a sick child at home that you need to care for and they cannot be by themselves, there is sick time that you are able to utilize. You will receive some sick time and accrue for every single paycheck that you receive, and that is yours to use. It does affect our staffing, and we do need to maintain our minimum staffing levels. But if you need to go home for a family emergency, then you need to go home for a family emergency. If you need to attend one of our critical incident stress management debriefings to help you go over maybe a really tough call, and we will allow you to leave to go and participate in that so that we can help take care of our mental health as well. We need to be mentally healthy in order to be present and do our jobs. So if you do need sick time, or there's also FMLA within the city, we would be following all of those regulations and what you do receive as far as sick time. So I mean, we don't want to go below minimum staffing, but if you need to take care of what you need to take care of, then we want you to do that to make sure you can be present the next time you show up and you're not worried about everything else that is happening. And so we would work with that person, and once you're here as an employee, you would get an idea of how that works. And there's a procedure for calling out sick or making sure you're letting your supervisor know, so then that you could go home and we could send out a page for overtime. And if someone is available, they could come in and cover so that our shift isn't running short. There's a couple different iterations or variations of how that might look, and also depending on the time of day. So I have 3 kiddos, and they've all been sick before. And so there's different family needs. And if we need to accommodate that within the sick time parameters, we will 100% do that and support people with that.
Thank you, Monica. We're running a little short on time, so we may only have enough time for a couple more questions. This one I'm going to direct towards Kristen. What are 3 things you look for in candidates you hire other than meeting the bare qualifications?
That's a good question. I'm not going to necessarily just give 3. So I will definitely say what we're looking for. And if you look at the job description for public safety radio dispatcher training, it's on the job description, it lists different competencies, and it talks about those competencies and what we're looking for with those. And then it also lists ideal candidate basic knowledge and skills. So I would say for that person to go look at that job description and refer to those. And then also those qualities that Monica mentioned earlier in the presentation. So those ideal qualities and someone who's going to be able to work as a part of a team and be a good multitasker and work and support the community and the general public. And so I would say I can't just necessarily give 3, but the best place to go look would be to go ahead and refer to that job description and those competencies and ideal qualities.
Thank you, Kristen. I'm going to go ahead and call this one our last question. So I'm going to ask a relevant question to that. If someone was on the fence about applying and pursuing this career, what would be your advice? And I'd like to hear from all 3 of you, please.
Monica, we'll go seniority order, you start.
Okay. And I will try and make this one quick so we can get through all of us. So someone that is on the fence about this career. Well, it depends on how much previous research you've already done. If you're on the fence because you're in the beginning part of the journey of looking into becoming a dispatcher, I would say continue looking into it. You can Google lots of different things. You can hear 911 calls. And I think immersing yourself in what you might be getting into would be really good. If you've done the research and you've looked into it and you're still on the fence, this is something that I mentioned before, you want to be passionate about, but there's also an element to it of the unknown. If you've never seen a dispatch environment or you think it might be something that you could do and that you want to do, then I would encourage you to apply and continue to move forward with it, because it might be something that you end up loving, and it might be something that you don't like, and that's okay too. But you won't know unless you apply and try out this profession and see how you could grow and evolve and see if it's for you. So couple of different things there, but either way, I think the end point is if you're on the fence and you're going a little bit more towards trying it, I would encourage you to keep going with it. And if you don't make it the first time, try again. All processes are very different, and you can learn from how far you made it in the first process, and then try again and keep going.
I'll go next, and then we'll end with Marissa on that one. Similar to what I was going to say to what Monica said is, yes, depending on where you're at, do the research. But if you are at all interested, I recommend applying. Like I mentioned earlier, I found it on Craigslist. I had no idea what I was getting into. And then I very quickly did my research because I realized how competitive it was. And as I continued through the process, I realized this is something I want to do. And this is something I very, very quickly became passionate about. But like Monica said, you learn through the process, and maybe you apply this time and you don't make it, but then you know what that process looks like. And so you can improve for the next time and try different processes if you're, unless you really want to just be with us, which of course we want, but try different processes, and you're only going to continue to improve and learn and do better each and every time. And so if you're at all on the fence, I say go for it. And if you decide that it's not for you during the process, that's okay too, because you can always say, you know what, this one wasn't for me. I thought it was, and it's not, and that's okay too, because then you've learned it wasn't the right thing. And so I definitely encourage you to go ahead and apply. Marissa.
So when I applied, I was also on the fence. Like I said, this was not what I thought I was going to be doing, nor did I want to apply, but I did. And I've been here for 14 years. I will hit 15 years in January. And this is probably the best move that I did as far as a career change. Every day I come to work and I enjoy what I do. So yes, you can apply. I would highly encourage you to apply. Even if you kind of lean towards maybe not wanting to do it, at least you'll get the experience of the kind of hiring process that we have. It's a lot more structured than other hiring processes. And this experience would be good for any type of job. But that also may change your mind if you're on the fence. Once you go through the process, you may realize this is a lot, or you may realize this is worth it, and to keep going. Because once I passed the process. I didn't really understand how much of a process it was. Once I passed, I was really excited to start my career, and I pretty much get excited almost every day I come to work. There's always something new to do. I'm always learning, and I would just say apply. The worst we could say is no or yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you to everyone for being a part of tonight's online event. And a special thank you to Monica, Kristen, and Marissa for answering all of the excellent questions that were submitted. As a reminder, we will have 3 in-person Ask a Dispatcher events this Saturday at various fire stations around the city. More information on exact times and locations can be found on the San Jose Fire Department's various social media channels. To apply for the Public Safety Radio Dispatch trainee position, please visit sjfd911.org. That's sjfd911.org, and submit your application by July 28th, which is 2 weeks from tomorrow. I hope everyone has a great rest of your week, and thank you again for joining us tonight.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you for coming.